Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Iman Abdul Hakim bin Abdul Rashid, and today I will be presenting to you on my research, Designing Future Markets, Developing a Spatial Framework and Implementation in Central Market, Kuala Lumpur. Chapter 1. What is art? Art is defined as a conscious, concentrated and intent manifestation of human skill and imagination. It is not accidental but specifically called into material being by human activity. It encompasses a broad spectrum from traditional painting and sculpture to modern photography and installations. A primary characteristic of art is its relational nature. Its purpose is fundamentally dependent on being viewed and experienced by others. Serves as a vessel for preserving human history, culture, and personal narratives across generations. Provides a window into different cultures and life experiences, acting as a bridge for humans to understand one another regardless of geographic or ethnic backgrounds. Art markets. An art market requires three basic elements: the object, the seller, and the buyer. It is a shift in a transactional nature, where an evolution from a direct patron-artist interactions in studios where labor and skill were negotiated face-to-face to a now more complex mediated system. It is driven by the emergence of art collectors, where a shift from functional patronage to an acquisition of art for collections, mobility of the artworks, where art pieces can now be transported and traded outside of their places of origin, and specialized selling mechanisms, creation of dedicated physical and figurative spaces such as fairs, galleries, museums, and workshops. This physical venue is not just a backdrop but a crucial factor in how art is shared and how connections between different people are facilitated. Malaysia's stance in the world of art is in three parts, where the first is educational marginalization. The prioritization of STEM over artistic disciplines has resulted in a systemic devaluation of the arts and fostered the stigmatization of artistic labor. Infrastructural and policy misalignment. Urban development frequently prioritizes tech-centric branding and commercial interests over grassroots creative spaces. It is often conflates the arts with the technology industry, resulting in a lack of authentic community hubs. And finally, technological commodification, where the rise of unregulated AI threatens to reduce the creativity of a mass-produced commodity. This issue is compounded by a public inability to distinguish between human-centric art and the algorithmic generation, where the aim of this research is to create a design guide or framework for modern art markets based on research and to test its practicality in the assessment of the central market, Kuala Lumpur's performance, and establish a model that can be applied to the future art markets/hubs in Malaysia, where the first objective is to identify key design features that make modern art markets successful by reviewing existing research, to use these identified features as a checklist to assess the current condition of the central market and determine how effectively it supports the local art community, and finally to propose a comprehensive design strategy for the central market that serves as a working model demonstrating how this framework can be adapted to guide the development of future art markets in Malaysia. To achieve the objectives, where Objective 1 is through strategic literature review, and Objective 2 is through case study analysis and site observation, and Objective 3 is through the synthesis of findings, integrating the results from the literature review, RO1, and the case study analysis in RO2. Chapter 2. Literature Review Findings. It is divided into 5 topics, where the first topic is the theoretical framework. Firstly, placemaking theory. This study utilizes placemaking as a primary lens, defining it is a collaborative process that transforms the public realm into meaningful environments and beloved spaces or places through collective participation. Creative placemaking paradigm. This framework frames artists as entrepreneurial figures essential to urban resilience rather than mere passive recipients of funding, integrating community development directly with artistic production. The spatial understanding of art infrastructure. Production versus branding, where effective art infrastructure must prioritize aesthetic labor, the visible process of creation, and co-production spaces over flagship branding. For example, grassroots community spaces that are often found in adaptive reuse projects tries to provide the authenticity and stability required for artists to thrive as entrepreneurial figures. The essence of adaptive reuse, where this process leverages local wisdom and site authenticity by repurposing historic structures for new functions, bridging community memory with a modern programmatic needs. There are 5 strategies where type 1 preservative retains the original layout and the raw industrial elements. Type 2 preservative plus interior interventions modernizes the interior into a somewhat white cube model while keeping the shell intact. Type 3 coexistence integrates contemporary extensions alongside original structures. Type 4 new domination allows new architectural massing to dominate the historic site. Or type 5 balanced contrast creates a deliberate tension between modern sculptural shapes and historical volumes. Typology of art markets. There are 4 typology of art markets, where the first is the neutral container or the white cube, characterized by isolation and artificial lighting to create a timeless environment. This modernist typology is often result in social segregation by prioritization and high sensitivity over community accessibility. The theater of valuation or auction houses. These spaces utilize hierarchical layouts and a sense of spectacle to drive the pricing. The ephemeral city or art fairs, defined as a nomadic urbanism. Art fairs utilize high-density grid layouts to maximize dealer concentration. This structure facilitates rapid global networking and high-volume commerce rather than long-term community engagement. The permeable bazaar or civic markets. Unlike the temporary flexible structure of the bazaar, the civic markets functions as a permanent institution. It balances high-density trading with public movement, serving as a social third place where cultural exchange is as vital as the transaction itself. Architectural strategies for future art markets. The first is from classroom to participatory streets. To counteract the system neglect of art in formal education, architecture must transition from look but don't touch environments to a public participatory spaces. Implementing shared studios and interactive zones and design encourages learning by doing, bringing professionals and beginners together. Human ingenuity versus AI templates. To resist AI-driven commodification, architects should adopt speculative spatial strategies and to create unique digital environments impossible to replicate via generic algorithms. The effectiveness of the digital art in urban planning relies on interactive themes and cultural specificity rather than the technology itself. For the final synthesis, the key variables for spatial shifting is that first, typology from enclosed static malls to a more permeable urban extension. A function from a selling only to a dual purpose making per showing environment. Social from a passive look but don't touch to an active participatory learning. And digital from AI replacement fields to human-centric digital hybridity. You can pause the video to look at the table more. I'm running out of time, so I have to continue. Chapter 3, Methodology of Research. The research approach and design, where it employs a qualitative case study design centered on the central market Kuala Lumpur, where the research structure and data collection methods are executed through a 3-phase process, which are investigation, analysis, and synthesis. In data analysis and evaluation instrument, the data is interpreted through typological analysis using a specialized evaluation instrument that assesses 4 core themes: heritage, artist support, public access, and digital growth. Chapter 4, Findings and Analysis. The findings are divided into 4 themes, where the first themes are typology and heritage use, historical significance and evolution, where it highlights the origin of the market itself. Originally in 1937, started as a wet market, represents a landmark case of heritage conservation in Malaysia. It pioneers the adaptive reuse. It is the first adaptive reuse project led by a private developer. Architectural strategy. It is for the typology of adaptive reuse. It is classified under type 2 preservative strategy with interior intervention, where the Art Deco facade is meticulously maintained to preserve its original historical and design identity, but its significant structural and systemic interventions include in the addition of the mezzanine levels and full air conditioning and modern passenger lifts. For the interior, permeability. The layout remains spatially permeable, utilizing multiple open entrances to maintain a physical connection with the surrounding urban fabric. Commercial focus. The interior functions primarily as a modernized private shopping mall, prioritizing commercial transactions over community-centric or civic activities. Theme 2, Workspace and Artist Spot, Spatial Disconnect and Functional Segregation. Retail Dominance. The main market building functions exclusively as a retail destination for finished goods. Marginalized production of the aesthetic labor, where the creative process is active but is segregated and confined to the ground floor of the annex building, away from the primary visitor flows. Commoditization of art. The market reinforces the perception of art as a mere commodity, undermining the public appreciation for the technical skill and labor involved. Spatial constraints. In the environmental and ergonomic deficits, artists' workspace consists of small, cramped retail lots that are poorly suited for the physical requirements of artistic production. Inadequate infrastructure. The annex lacks centralized ventilation and sufficient natural lighting, forcing practitioners to rely on personal fans for thermal regulation and artificial sources of light for task lighting. And poor ergonomics, where the current configuration fails to support the health and productivity of the artist, further distancing the studio from the gallery experience. Team 3, Educational and Public Access, where the educational engagement and cultural literacy is a passive delivery in this education, where it is restricted more to static historical displays and plaques that are rarely engaged by the public. Lack of learning by doing. Active participation is rated as passive, with hands-on engagement limited to only to fee-based retail lots for batik and handicrafts. Social infrastructure and public access. A deficit of third places, where the facility lacks non-transactional spaces where the public can linger without the pressure to consume. Transactional seating culture, where the public seating is assessed as absent. Available benches are largely confined to food courts and restaurants where purchase is implicitly expected. And barriers to socialization effectively stifles community socialization, spontaneous cultural exchange, and long-term engagement with the heritage site. Team 4, Digital and Future Growth, where digital infrastructure and the orange economy. Stagnant analog environment. The market operates almost entirely within an analog framework. Absence of immersive media. There is a total lack of digital integration, specifically regarding interactive screens and digital display arts. Transactional technology, where the current on-site technology is mainly used for the basic business transactions and payments. Vulnerability to digital threats. Lack of narrative tools. The market misses the opportunity to articulate a unique value of human craftsmanship of automated alternatives and AI commodification. This technological void leaves site vulnerable to the threats of AI-led commodification, as there is no digital infrastructure to defend or highlight the authenticity of local artistic identities. You can pause more in order to read and understand more of the evaluation instrument checklist. This is the first team, the second team, the third team, and the fourth team. Chapter 5, Conclusion and Recommendations. Summary of the findings: marginalized artist support, transactional public engagement, and digital stagnation. You can pause more in order to read it more clearly. This is the final proposed spatial framework, where it is divided into 4 parts: strategic pillar, issue address, design, action, implementation, and intended impact. With the first being visible production loops, the hidden studio problem, the micro studio integration, the social anchors, transactional spaces into non-transactional zones, human-centric digital hybridity to a digital void, the storytelling and display tech, the civic classroom, passive observation to a more flexible workshop zones. Again, you can pause it in order to read it more clearly. Recommendation for future studies were quantitative user studies, expert validation of the framework, economic feasibility analysis, comparative studies of other markets. Conclusion: the central market of Kuala Lumpur currently occupies a tenuous position between its historical identity and its aspiration to function as a modern creative hub, a transition that requires moving beyond a mere architectural preservation towards a more active spatial programming. This research concludes that the market's current retail-centric model limits its potential, necessitating a reimagined spatial framework that prioritizes a visible artistic production, social anchors, and digital hybridity over traditional transactional commerce. By repositioning architecture as a silent educator, the proposed redesign transforms the physical environment into an interactive cultural ecosystem. Ultimately, this strategic shift enables the central market to transcend its role as a souvenir destination, instead functioning as a catalyst for cultivating a new generation of Malaysians who are deeply engaged with the protective of their national cultural heritage. Thank you.